Welcome to the Cedar Falls regular City Council meeting this July 15, 2019. I'll now call this meeting to order and ask for a roll call from Madam Clerk, please.
Miller.
Here.
DeBoer.
Here.
Cruz. Blanford.
Here.
Dara.
Here.
Wheeland.
Here.
Green.
Here.
Councilmember Cruz, absent, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to item 1, is there a motion to approve the regular meeting of July 1st?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Before we move further, I'd like to introduce a group of young folks and one not so young coming here to give us a short presentation on the tremendous work being done throughout the school year. So greatly appreciate them coming in the middle of July. The Swart Dogs are here for the high school, Cedar Falls High School robotics program. I'm going to give them the floor for a few minutes. Welcome.
I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. I'm Kenton Swartley with the Cedar Falls High School robotics team, and I have 4 students here that will be sharing with you about some of our experiences. Seniors Megan Peasley, Dylan Wells, Cole Edgington, and junior Roxana Ariola.
Awesome. Make sure that microphone's right there for us, okay?
Is this good?
I think so.
Okay.
Thanks.
Overall, we had a really great 2019 season. One of our biggest accomplishments was that we earned the Chairman's Award, which is the most prestigious award at any FRC competition, and it's given to the team who best represents the models and mission of FIRST. So what our team specifically did to earn the Chairman's Award was we grew first in our community, the state of Iowa, and also in China. And we're very fortunate to have received this award, especially because we received it at the FRC Regional that's right here in our hometown of Cedar Falls.
Exactly what Megan said. We won the Chairman's Award at Iowa Regional, which is located at the Unidome and McLeod Center. And we have actually ran this Iowa Regional for the past 4 years, and we continue to run it again from March 26th to 28th next year in 2020.
Awesome.
And we did have another competition this year, and that competition was at Northern Lights, which is in Duluth, Minnesota. And at that competition, we ended up having the winning alliance, which is something very good for our robot because that meant we were one of the top 3 robots in that whole competition. And that also, our robot also qualified as a finalist at Iowa, so we were almost another winning alliance in Iowa, but we were just short. But it was still really good, and we had a really great year as a robot.
Awesome.
These accomplishments at Iowa with the Chairman's Award and at Duluth, Minnesota with the regional win actually qualified us for the World Championships held in Detroit, which is where we go, and we compete against teams all over the world. There were teams from Japan. I think there were some from countries in South America, I'm pretty sure. I don't know, it's a big competition. And at that place, we're kind of separated into divisions. And in our division, we ended up ranking 3rd overall, which is pretty good for us. And along with that, at our Northern Lights Regional, we were able to win the Woody Flowers Award, which is an award that commemorates a mentor for how they've impacted students and work that they've done through FIRST. And we are the first team in the world to win 6. So 6 of our mentors have the Woody Flowers Award, and we're really proud of that.
As are we. Thank you very much for coming in. Really appreciate seeing you. At this time, I'd also like to turn things over to Director Olson for a brief presentation. Director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we get the privilege and honor to swear in another public safety officer, Lucas Schmidt. Lucas was raised in Preston, Iowa. He's the youngest of 10 kids. He has a bachelor's in public relations and criminology from Loras. He received an Eagle Scout Award in 2014. He's been a volunteer firefighter in Preston since 2012. His brother Mark has been a firefighter in Preston for 20 years, and his father Gary has been a firefighter in Preston for 52 years. He will attend the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy in August. He already is Firefighter 1 certified, but I want to read some of these other certifications and training that Lucas has had. As I mentioned, he's firefighter 1 certified, hazmat operations certified, fire apparatus driver operator pumper certified, wilderness search and rescue boater safety ed course, building an aggressive engine company class, combine rescue, interior fire attack simulator, confined space rescue, grain bin rescue, high angle rope rescue, advanced vehicle extrication, forcible entry, and manure pit rescue. So he's had an extensive training history in the fire division already. So Lucas, if you want to step up, we'll do a swearing-in ceremony.
If you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Lucas Troy Schmidt,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties of my position
discharge all the duties of my position
as Public Safety Officer
as Public Safety Officer
in the city of Cedar Falls, Iowa,
in the city of Cedar Falls, Iowa,
as now or hereafter
as now or hereafter
required by law.
required by law.
Congratulations. So sanitary. Thanks, Director. Thanks for all the family arriving as well. Moving on to the next agenda item, are there any revisions, Madam Clerk?
I have no agenda revisions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item number 2 is a special order of business, a public hearing, the proposed plans for the 2019 bridge maintenance project. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any written communications filed with the city clerk?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Before we move on to the public hearing or public comments, I'll turn it over to staff Chase Strage for some brief information on this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. The 2019 bridge maintenance project is one that we have on an alternating year basis. In 2018, we did our bridge inspection. It was noticed that approximately 8 structures had some deficiencies that needed to be corrected, and in turn, we have this project coming that consists of concrete replacement, bridge deck overlays, sealing of expansion joints, and some handrails that needed to be fixed. With that, this project is anticipated to cost approximately $151,000 and funded through the Street Construction Fund.
Thank you, Chase. I will now open up for public comment on this particular public hearing. Hearing and seeing none, I'll declare the hearing closed. Item 3 is a resolution approving and adopting the plans for the 2019 bridge maintenance project. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 4 is Pass Ordinance 2947, amending the Code of Ordinances by removing property located at Grove Street from the R3 to C2 upon its third and final consideration. Is there a motion, please?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 5 is Pass Ordinance 2949, amending certain sections of the Code of Ordinances relative to establishing regulations for events on public property. Upon its second consideration, is there a motion, please? Motion second. Comments? Roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next is new business consent calendar. The following items would be acted upon by a voice vote on a single motion without separate discussion, unless someone from council or the community requests an item to be pulled for such discussion. Any such requests from council? I believe there's a public for item 7C. Is that correct? Anything further from the public? I'll now summarize the consent calendar minus item 7C. Item 6 is receive and file the resignation of Deb Giarusso as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I want to thank Deb and her husband Rick for serving the community and wish them well into the future endeavors that they're off to embark on. Item 7 is approving special events related requests, street closures in the Live to 9, street closure Hiawatha Road, street closure Artapalooza. And item 8 reads approve permits and licenses. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar minus 7C?
So moved.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item 7 reads approving the special event related request for street closure at Bluebell Road August 6th. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion from council at this time? From the public?
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Penny Pop. I live at 4805 South Main. I am president of the South Main and Green Hill Corridor Neighborhood Association. The association and our partner Fairway is requesting a partial street closure on Bluebell Avenue to host our first annual Neighborhood Night Out on August 6th. It's being held in conjunction with the citywide event and with the cooperation of our Public Safety Department. The association appreciates the support of our city with this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion from council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next is a resolution calendar. The following items would be acted upon by a roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion. Unless someone from the council or the public requests an item to be pulled for such discussion. Any requests from, I do know items 19 and 25 have been called out. Anything further from council?
Item 9, Mr. Mayor.
Item 9. Anything further from council? From the public? Yep, thank you, sir. 9, 19, yes, ma'am. 22, okay. Anyone further from the public? I'll now summarize the resolution calendar minus items 9, 19, 22, and 25. Item 10 is approving and authorizing execution of a memorandum of understanding with the Teamsters Union Local Number 238 relative to earning compensation. Item 11 is approving execution of an extension of an agreement for custodial services relative to city services buildings and for the new public safety facility. Item 12 is approving and authorizing the expenditure of funds for the purchase of a dump truck. Item 13 is approving and authorizing execution of a memorandum of understanding with CFU. 14 is approving 3 claims for non-residential relocation assistance reimbursement in conjunction with the West First Street project. 15 is resolution receiving and filing the bids and approving and accepting the low bid in the amount of $135,500 for the South Main Street parking lot project. 16 is approving and authorizing execution of a contract for completion of improvements relative to the final plat of Sands Addition. 17 is approving the opening of the Section 8 waiting list as recommended by the Housing Commission. 18 is a resolution approving a central business district site plan for facade improvements on 2nd Street. 20 is approving the preliminary plat for Chrisbro subdivision. 21 is approving the final plat of Sands Addition. 23 is approving and authorizing execution of a home investment partnership program. 24 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a professional service agreement with Intercog relative to the CDBG and home programs. 26 is a resolution receiving and filing and setting August 5th for the date of public hearing and the proposed plans for the 2019 sidewalk assessment project. 27 is August 5th as the date of public hearing, the proposed vacation of 15-foot wide pedestrian trail access with Western Home Communities. 28 is setting August 5th as the date of public hearing on a proposed ordinance granting a partial property tax exemption for construction of an industrial use manufacturing and office facility on Development Drive. 29 is setting August 5th as a date of public hearing on the proposed ordinance granting a partial property tax exemption for construction of an industrial use warehouse and production facility on Capitol Way. And item 30 is setting August 5th as a date of public hearing on a proposed ordinance granting a partial property tax exemption for construction of an industrial use lab and office facility on Venture Way. Is there a motion to approve the resolution calendar minus those items pulled?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion from council? Requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving back to item 9, it reads a resolution approving the recommendation of the city administrator by appointing a director of public works for the city of Cedar Falls. Is there a motion, please?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion second. Open it up for discussion with council. Mr. Green?
Mayor, so looking at this in the council packet, it's page 30 and is a one-page document just as a resolution for council to approve or to approve the appointment. Seeing that there's a lack of documentation for this appointment, and then also that it's listed as being effective July 1st, 2019. I have two questions about why we would need to backdate this promotion, and also a question of how many candidates were interviewed for the position and what the candidate's current status is with the city, if he's an interim director or how that works.
I'll turn to you, Mr. Gaines.
So with regard to candidates, I think we started off with a pool of about 14 candidates, ended up interviewing over Skype and internal interviews, had 3 internal candidates, and we, I'm trying to go off memory here, I apologize, Mr. Green, but we had several rounds of interviews. We had the first round with department directors, and then we also had a panel with the mayor and the council member DeBoer and council member Miller that's in on the interviews, and we narrowed the selection down to the candidate that we're suggesting right now. He is an internal candidate, Chase Schrage. You all know he's been in the engineering department for, I want to say, 7 or 8 years, and we felt that he was the best candidate to move forward.
Okay, thank you. And is there a reason for needing to have it be effective July 1st rather than today?
We could make that as today. I think when the offer letter was made and the acceptance, it was at that July 1st time period. We were just trying to move the process along.
Thank you.
Anything further from council?
Mr. Gaines? Just to clarify, this is the same process we've followed in the past, right, for department directors?
For department directors, that's the only difference would be Director Olson, and that's just because the public safety director / police chief would have to be through a civil service process. So that would be a little bit different.
Thank you.
Anything further, council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, for an amendment, I would request or move to amend this resolution to change the effective date from July 1st, 2019 to July 15th, 2019, just to preserve the integrity of the council approval process.
Been motioned by Councilman Green to amend item 9 and move the July 1st date to July 15th as the start date. Is there a second? Hearing none, that motion fails. We're now back to the original resolution approving the recommendation. Anything further from council?
Mr. Mayor.
From council?
Okay.
Yes, Ms.
I was just going to say that I was part of the interview team, and I'm very proud to have this candidate move forward.
Thank you. Anything further from council?
Mr. Mayor, I would have to disagree just on the fact of the changing of the date or having the date the 1st, because council is the approving authority for this. And the perception for me is that we're simply taking direction from city staff.
Anything further from council? From the public?
Yes. This says, resolution approving the recommendation of the city administrator by appointing the Director of Public Works for the city of Cedar Falls. I thought we determined that there is no city administrator. It was illegal when it was done in 2014, in June 23rd, 2014. For 5 years, it was illegal until I called it to your attention and declared, because of this law 372, that it was null and void because you didn't have a petition. You didn't have an election. Even the school bond vote the other day had a petition and it had an election before they could authorize that bond vote. So you're continuing to operate illegally, okay? Is that your position, Mr. Mayor?
We will address your questions at the end of your comments.
Well, see, that's not the way parliamentary procedure works. You have interchange. I mean, you have it up there. Councilman Member Green said something, and somebody else said something, and he, rightfully responded. And yet you invariably say that you can't respond in a public situation. And that's, again, on this particular process. So I really am concerned that 7 of you are time and time again willing to be illegal. Is that the heritage that you want? To be able to say, I'm bigger than the state law? Because Mr. Gaines is a nice guy, but he's not the city
Please refrain from using names. Just address the chair if you would, please.
Well, I am addressing the chair. I had to use his name in order to address the chair about Mr. Gaines. He's not city administrator.
Thank you. Item is on the table, been motion and second for the original resolution. Any further discussion from council? Requires a roll call vote, please.
Five voting aye, one voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 19 is a resolution approving the Cherrywood Acres minor plat. Is there a motion, please?
Second.
Been motion and second. Open anything up first to the council. Comments from council? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Back in the 60s and early 70s, it was quite common for Cedar Falls developers to put in what's called a developmental agreement. At that time, the city was in the process of integrating duplexes throughout the city. And people who were going to buy a new development area wanted to know where the duplexes were. They were afraid they'd buy a property and someone would buy the one next to them and put in a duplex. And they preferred to live in an R1 area with other families, with children and so forth. So it became a pretty common process. The dilemma with those developments is they last 23 years. The one in my area was over about 10, 15 years ago. It's my understanding that Cherrywood had a developmental agreement that protected them from this type of development up until a certain point in time, and that expired. I'm curious to find out if that development organization has done anything to renew or to put some teeth back into it, and if that has any influence on the decision tonight. So I anxiously await for comments from those people who are involved or concerned about this. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Whelan. Anything further from council? We'll certainly open up from the floor. The gentleman in the purple UNI shirt, I think I saw his hand up first.
The seats up there are a lot softer than they are back here, I'll tell you that. My name is John Runchie. I live at 920 Columbine Drive in Cherrywood. I used to be part of your little group up there, but I had to retire because of health reasons. It seems the people of Third Ward got sick of me. I hope you will allow this plan to not proceed, because this will change the essential character of their neighborhood. The location of this request is at the entrance to Cherrywood. So the first thing you'll see as you drive in is a small lot with a pretty good-sized house on it. I suppose it's technically legal because the majority, but not all, of the Planning and Zoning Commission said so. The covenant restricting this action has expired. You're right, Dave. I'm concerned that several great neighbors and friends will be moving because their property value has declined. I'm sure you understand that it will. So I ask you to do the right thing and deny this request. Because if it is allowed to happen, I think it will change our neighborhood forever. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Anyone further on this item to comment?
Hi, my name is Susie Sigworth. I live at 1028 Cherrywood Drive, right next to Mr. Runyon. My husband Mark and I have lived in Cherrywood Acres for 22 years and have loved everything about the neighborhood. We moved here for the big lot size, the trees, the view, and the overall country feel. I grew up on a farm outside of a small town, so I was looking for an open place to raise my kids that had a rural feel. Cherrywood was perfect and has been. Over the years, Cedar Falls has been blessed with growth and prosperity, and we have been happy to witness that and be a part of that. We have even had family members move here to Cedar Falls from 3 hours away because they fell in love with the community when coming to see us. My mom actually moved into Cherrywood Acres 15 years ago and lived there until failing health prevented her from staying in her home. She loved it too. This neighborhood is my family. Bruce Adkins and I have organized neighborhood street picnics together for many years. People bring a covered dish, a hog is roasted, and the kids all play games together. Bruce also takes pumpkins around and has my kids and other kids help to all the neighbors during Halloween in the fall. And the Hellers, our other neighbors, they have a fruit and vegetable stand at the end of the neighborhood where neighbors give and take on a regular basis for free. It's an awesome display of friendship among neighbors all the time. One person who moved to the neighborhood said, "It's like a little slice of heaven." So I tell you all of this because I want to share the uniqueness and kindness of our neighborhood. I feel during the planning and zoning meetings we were made out to be some terrible, judgmental people when it comes to this plat division. That is not the case. We just love this neighborhood that much, and we love the feel and the look of the neighborhood, and that's why we're fighting to keep it the way that it is. We have a beautiful mix of elderly and young neighbors, and we look out for each other. You can tell by the support that we've received in all the meetings that we are loved and our neighborhood is loved. I may not live in Cherrywood forever, but I will love the character and personality of this neighborhood and those in it who have helped me raise my children. I will love that my kids could play baseball in the backyard, not worry about breaking someone's window, and feel like they could see for miles. That's why we bought our home, for the space and the feel of Cherrywood. As if that wasn't enough, little did we know that we would get the amazing people that came with Cherrywood Acres. I mentioned that we appreciate the growth and prosperity that has happened in Cedar Falls over the past 22 years since we became permanent residents. Although sad to see the horse farm disappear across the road from us, we were not opposed to the neighborhood forming across us in Alexis Boulevard. And although we had concerns about runoff in the Autumn Ridge neighborhood to the north of Cherrywood, we welcomed that development. We have also watched the development of Wild Horse to our south, and recently we have been presented with the new Aldea development to our southeast, which was supposed to be an area designated for runoff, we were told during the development of Autumn Ridge. So we're not so pleased about that one right now. And now we are being told that our next door neighbor is going to take land adjacent to our backyard to make even more housing. Up to this point, I had told my husband that progress and growth are inevitable and that things are going to change. But these past two proposals of New Aldea and the Platte Division on High Street are completely unbelievable to me, especially the proposal we are discussing tonight. The area that Mr. Runyon wants to develop on is our view. We currently see trees and we see the golf course when looking northeast from our deck. Once his proposed house is built, we will see nothing but his house. There will no longer be an open field. Is it his lot? Yes. But we bought our lot with the sight lines that are presently there. We bought our house and were given a deed that stated the lots in Cherrywood cannot be divided. And apparently, as Mr. Wieland said, that a law was passed in the 80s that says that all deeds and covenants must be reinstated after 21 years and every 10 years after that.
1 minute, please.
Funny how no one knows that information until it's too late. Tony's lot can be divided based on city code, but I will again reiterate that it is not a fit for our neighborhood. If his lot is divided, the two lots will be half the size of all other lots in our neighborhood. It will change the look of the neighborhood as you enter Cherrywood, and it opens up the possibility to split a few other lots in the neighborhood, since our neighborhood is no longer protected. My opinion is that Mr. Runyon is building a second house to make money. My concern is that he will live in the new house for a short time, and then two houses will be up for sale in the future, and a totally different clientele will buy or rent the houses because they will be small and on a small plot of land, unlike the rest of the neighborhood. My hope is that you will see this the same as I do and protect the integrity and the beauty of Cherrywood Acres.
Thank you very much. Anyone further for public comment?
Good evening, Mark Sigworth, 1028 Cherrywood Drive. I could stand up here and reiterate my opposition of the plat division of this lot on High Street. And while I continue to feel it's a terrible idea, I'm going to take this as my time at the podium to share my dismay and how I feel about the situations that have been handled with planning and zoning in the city government here in Cedar Falls. On June 12th and June 26th, my wife and I and many of our neighbors attended planning and zoning meetings to discuss the splitting of the proposed lot on High Street and Cherrywood Acres. Hopefully you've had a chance to watch those meetings. What happened at the meeting on the 26th was the most immature, unprofessional attempt to due process I have ever witnessed. First of all, there were two committee members who had spoken in our favor at the June 12th meeting. One of them said he didn't see how this house could fit either aesthetically or physically in the space provided by Mr. Runyon. He said he wanted to go on record as saying he didn't think it was a good idea. Immediately after that meeting, Mr. Runyon and his father walked up to the committee member and began talking to him. We stood by and watched them try to convince them of their plan to build, which obviously worked because the committee member had done a complete 180-degree turn by the next meeting on the 26th. At the start of that meeting on the 26th, when asked if any of the committee members had spoken to either side about the issue at hand, that committee member did not speak up. However, another planning and zoning member stated that he had spoken with Mr. Runyon about the type of house he wanted to build. When the proposal was brought to my attention, I was told by city staff that it was not an option to speak with members of planning and zoning outside of the meeting. I was told that I could contact members of the city council, but not members of the planning and zoning committee. However, after the June 12th meeting had adjourned, I and other residents of Cherrywood Acres saw one member talking with the Runyons, and at the June 26th meeting, another member admitted to discussing the plat change with Mr. Runyon. Does this seem fair to you, or does it seem like a double standard? Another thing that happened during the meetings that seemed unjust, was when the residents of Cherrywood stood up at the podium and posed questions to the committee and to Mr. Runyon. Unfortunately, the majority of those questions were never answered. Instead, the floor was closed for comment, and the committee went on to make speculations and assumptions about the Cherrywood deed and things in the neighborhood that could have been answered by members of the neighborhood. It was so frustrating to sit in the audience unable to answer their questions or dispute their comments. But the most frustrating, hurtful, and inexcusable part of that meeting was when one of your planning and zoning committee members stated that the meeting was a character assassination on Mr. Runyon. There wasn't a single resident who said something negative about Mr. Runyon in that meeting. I even went back and reviewed the recording to make sure. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to call myself a resident of Cherrywood Acres. This neighborhood consists of some of the nicest people you will ever meet. No one said a thing about Mr. Runyon personally. I know that Mr. Runyon is a builder and a realtor. This is a profitable move for him, and I'm not afraid to stand here and tell you about that. But I would never stand here and turn this into, quote, a character assassination, as it was referred to by one of the planning and zoning members, who is also a builder and realtor. Nor would my wife or other members of the Cherrywood Acres have supported this. The fact that one of your appointed planning and zoning members would accuse us of this is disrespectful, rude, and downright unprofessional. After doing some research after the meetings, my wife and I learned that several of the members of the Planning and Zoning Committee are realtors, developers, and architects. This is a major conflict of interest. That gives the developer in every situation, such as this one, the upper hand. Realtors and developers may work for separate companies, but they are more or less co-workers. They are working together to make deals to buy property. They profit from one another. How can this be an unbiased democratic process when they have vested interest in keeping their fellow realtors and developers happy? We don't need their expertise in the area of building and planning. That's why we have a city engineer and a city planner. We need an unbiased, honest group of people on planning and zoning looking at all the angles to see if the proposals brought forth are the best thing for Cedar Falls.
1 minute, Mark.
I've also learned from a member of your staff that city officials, including planning and zoning members and yourselves, have been instructed over the last few years about ex parte communication. That is, not speaking with applicants during certain times of decision making. This same staff member advised me that there is an inherent trust in an appointed and elected official that they won't make decisions in the open and on their own unique merits. Sadly, this rule was not followed and has opened up the fact that ethical standards have not been met by certain individuals on city staff. In closing, a member of the Planning and Zoning Committee stated at the last meeting that he wouldn't want this property in his backyard. I agree. I don't want it in my backyard either. This building envelope is not similar in size to other dwellings in the neighborhood. The area of both lots, as my wife stated, will be half the size of other lots in the Cherrywood Acres. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Gentleman here in front, leave our comments. You come on up. I know, yeah, you're welcome. You didn't see behind you there.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm Del Carpenter. I live at 1005 Cherrywood Drive, which is right across the street from Tony Runyon. And I have found Tony to be a good neighbor in Cherrywood, and someone needs to speak for him. So I'm here to advocate for Tony's proposal. What Tony represents for me is vision. Tony has a way of seeing how he can make a place for himself and his family in Cherrywood. And I applaud that vision. And I would hold up actually another property in Cherrywood that manifests that same vision. That would be Jeremy Swanson at 904 Cherrywood Drive. Jeremy took a house that was in the dump 2, maybe 3 years ago and made it a work of art. It's a work in progress, admittedly, but that's the kind of vision that I think is healthy in Cherrywood. And so I would recommend that you vote in support of Tony's application.
Thank you, Dale. Appreciate that. Yep. Anyone further? Yes, sir.
Chad Shoneman, 4307 Cherrywood. I guess first thing I wanted to do was touching on Mark's comments. I was kind of hurt by the Planning and Zoning Committee also when I heard the term, character assassination. I barely know Tony and his family. I didn't stand up here and downplay him or say anything bad about him. So if I came across that way, I guess I'd like to publicly apologize because that was not my intention. I got up here, stated the facts, and my belief is that a forum like this is the opportunity for the residents to get up and kind of say for themselves, what they like or dislike about something, not to get up here and pound fists. In response to the question earlier about why nobody did anything or looked anything into the deeds about the neighborhood agreement, the verbiage right after the 25-year expiration, the verbiage states that it's on a 10-year self-resetting clock every 10 years. So when I read that, I would interpret that, well, let me back up a little bit, unless voted out by the members of the neighborhood. And I don't recall ever being a part of that vote. I don't ever remember being invited to something. I don't ever remember that. So in my mind, when I read that information, I thought we were still in that 10-year resetting cycle, or I would have gone and done some information digging and tried to find out if that was still valid. Anyway, so that's why, at least myself, I didn't go research it. But I want to talk a little bit, I guess, tonight about my experience with my family and how we ended up at Cherrywood, and maybe it'll shed some light on why I'm opposed to it. My wife and I, Laura, we've lived there 9 years. We used to have a home over in Waterloo, and Laura's a Cedar Falls native. I happen to be from Clarksville, but we wanted to be out of Waterloo. We wanted, obviously she wanted to be in Cedar Falls because she's an alum, and I wanted to be out in the country. I wanted acreage. I wanted to have some dogs and a place to ride motorcycles and do stuff like that. Well, we were getting pretty frustrated. We working with realtors, working with for sale by owner, trying to find something. We couldn't find anything. So we ended up just getting in our car and driving around, going all these different neighborhoods. And one thing that we agreed on was we were not going to let the newness of the homes. You know, we were in a small house. We weren't going to let the awe of, wow, look at these houses. This is great. We stuck to a couple principles. One of them was if we didn't like the community, as soon as we entered, we wouldn't go any further. And by that, I mean if the houses were packed in tight, or if they just didn't look right, if their yards were small and the kids couldn't play, we turned right around and went out. So it turns out we ended up in Cherrywood Acres, and we're driving through it, and I thought, wow, this is nice spacing. This is kind of where I want to live. It's like I don't get the acreage. Laura gets Cedar Falls. We found a house. Turned out that day that the home we live in, they were sticking a for sale sign in the yard that day. We put the brakes on, went back, and said, hey, can we see your house? And we still live there today, 9 years later. So for me, when I went to the Planning and Zoning Committee last time, I was curious. I just looked at at the ordinances themselves, and some of them were referred to during the meeting and some of them were not, but the ordinance that jumped out at me was Article 3, Section 20-124. They call it a character of statement development to be included in the plat statement. And there's some miscellaneous verbiage in here, but what jumped out at me is the City and Planning Zoning Commission and the City Council may require that certain minimum regulations regarding type and character of subdivision development be incorporated in the owner's statement or deed of dedication. And I saw in the meeting minutes that all that stuff was in the application, but what I didn't see was the statement of character. And then it says, some more verbiage, such regulations shall be intended to protect the character and development of the platted subdivision as well as that of the surrounding development. So my concern is that this is a condition that we didn't want when we were selecting our home. So now it's a new condition. Now it's a new environment. When we enter, now we have to like, oh man, look at that house. That just looks weird. So for us, it's something new. So we're opposed to it. And then I just did a little bit of digging because of the statement of character. I thought, well, I've never seen that document. I personally don't know what it is.
One more minute.
Thank you.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
I'll be brief. In the one that I found online, it happened to be Missouri. Section 1 says building spacing. They call it land requirements. All the homes in Cherrywood are about 30 feet apart. I'm not talking about outbuildings. Maybe another section could be yard ratio to livable square foot. Maybe another addition could be proximity to major roads being union. Anyway, thank you for your time. I hope you make a decision on the majority of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate that. Anyone further to comment? Sure.
Tony Runyon, 4114 High Street. I was going to make this quick, but there's a lot to gather in here. I'll give you some background. I bought the house 2.5 years ago for me and my daughter. It's a log cabin on the inside, so I looked into remodeling, adding on, and it just wasn't feasible. So this opportunity where I could divide the land worked out perfect for me and my family. Then I met, which is now my wife, so we have changing life changing, obviously. So this has been a long, stressful process, 7 months to be around that area, and it's been an absolute learning experience. But thank you to Mr. Sturch, who has made this go fairly smoothly, and all his help. This is the third time I've had to stand up here and speak on this, and it is absolutely the last thing I want to do again. We have went through the process and have met all the criteria of the city's ordinance and codes to build our new home on this property. I'm sorry that some of the neighbors feel so negatively about this proposal, but like I said, directly, 2 of the 3 neighbors that are directly by me are for this, me building this property. I've gotten mail with no return address to support me. With no return address, I have received a call with no caller ID because they didn't want their name out there because of some of the neighbors here tonight. Some of them know who it is.
Folks.
Where are we at? And as far as meeting with Kyle Larson on that planning and zoning, he went on record to say that he didn't think it would fit. So all I did was ask him if he had seen the blueprint. And I sent him the print, and that's all what was said of that. And as far as with Brian Wingert, he was absent from the vote, or the meeting, so I called him and said, you know what's going on with this? Can you stop over and I'll just show you exactly what we want to do. That's all we had to say there. Not in a million years would I have thought that this would be this difficult and met by so much negativity, but we have gone through all the right steps and processes throughout this whole deal. And we just hope that you can approve this so we can move on and build ourselves a new home.
Thank you, Tony. Anyone further? Sorry, no, the one time, beg your pardon. Anyone further on this? Hearing and seeing none, I'll certainly open it up for council for a question. I'm sorry. Just your name and address, please.
Hold on one second.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to speak, so I didn't print this off, but I wrote it in my email, so.
If you don't mind, just moving that microphone down just so. Yeah, appreciate that.
I'm sorry.
I'll see, Sam.
Okay. My name is Leah Runyon, and I'm Tony Runyon's wife. Up until now, I've remained silent on this issue for a couple of reasons. Number one, public speaking is not at all my forte. And number two, I've always heard that you should never respond when you're angry. And the last time I was in this room, I was angry. Angry because, as one of the board members astutely pointed out, it turned into an assassination of character instead of focusing on the issue at hand. The question was raised numerous times why we like living in Cherrywood. Well, I can tell you why. Tony bought our current home the week that we started dating about 2.5 years ago. He said he bought a unique house to fix up and live in, and I was just happy to be along for the ride. When he showed me where it was located, I was floored. I had lived in Cedar Falls for over a decade at that point and had never even seen or heard of Cherrywood. I loved it immediately. Our first 2 summers there, we enjoyed it so much. We had backyard bonfires, took the dog on walks, went to the neighborhood grill out, and so on. This summer has been quite different. Aside from being busy with our recent wedding, as you can imagine, the vibe has completely changed since we proposed this project. We pull into the neighborhood and feel a sense of dread, and like everyone is against us. It's taken away all of the joy and excitement out of building our new family home. We avoid being outside and find it hard to be the cookie-cutter neighbor that Cherrywood evidently wants us to be. Do you blame us? The setup of our current home is not conducive to expanding our family. When Tony suggested building a new house that better suits us on the land that we already owned, it was a no-brainer. I'm sure any one of you would have done the same thing if you were in our shoes. This process has been exhausting and stressful at times, but all we want is to continue living in this peaceful neighborhood in a new home that meets our needs as a family. And that's the bottom line. We have passed all the criteria. Now we just ask that you approve our request so we can move forward and enjoy our property, just as our neighbors have the right to enjoy theirs. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Anyone further for public comment on this? Now open up to council for discussion amongst yourself or questions to staff. Mr. Burr?
Under the R1 zoning regulations, they're required to have the 30-foot setbacks both front and back, and I think it's more than 9,000 square foot and 10% sides. Is that correct?
Yeah, this, excuse me, the proposed lot is, meets all the current
R1 standards for lot area, setbacks, and building size.
The proposed one, but both of them do?
Both,
of them
the
do.
existing and the proposed lot both meet those standards.
Okay, and then the one question I had, it looked like where on the one diagram where they would be putting the house, it's moved quite a ways to the west. Is there a reason that it has to be that far to the west?
There is a 50-foot setback along Union Road, and that applies to all those lots along Union Road. So the front is considered High Street with a 30-foot, the back is the south side, and then the internal side yard setback is 9.5 feet, which is 10% of the lot width.
Okay, and it looked like further down, closer to 12th Street, there was another property that had two properties that were fairly close to the driveways anyway. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. Down by the corner of 12th, there's, the lots are basically the same size, but the driveways are on each of the lots.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything further from council? Mr. Wieland?
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3 areas I'd like to touch on. Typically, when we get a recommendation from P&Z, the staff recommendation or the recommendation out of P&Z list who voted and who voted against it. I did not see that in this presentation, so I'll ask staff, what was the vote on this proposal?
Planning and Zoning recommended approval, made a recommendation for approval with a 5 to 2 vote, excuse me.
And were there anybody not voting?
There were 2 absent members at that meeting, 7 present, 2 absent.
Okay. I appreciate that. I wish that had been in the report. They're not required to give their reasons for voting for or against. Obviously, if you're for it, you're following the logic of the development. It meets all the setbacks and that. But, any comments that you recall from the 2 who voted against it? Was it character of the neighborhood in general?
I don't recall them giving a reason when they made their vote, why they're voting in the negative.
Okay. And they're not required to do that?
On a
I know they're
plat,
not, so.
they were advised to give the reasons if they were voting negative on a plat.
Yeah, okay. My second area has to do with the covenant. I've heard it was 10-year renewable. My question is there any action on the part of the neighborhood to pursue that in a court of law? City has no part of that. That's a private agreement with the residents of Cherrywood. Is there any effort to pursue that in a court of law, which means we should wait until the court action gets taken? But I haven't heard that there's any of that going on. Is that true? Are they pursuing that? Come on up and.
I'm sorry, wait a second. We can't engage as far as the public disclosure is done per council rules, but if staff could please address Mr. Wieland's questions here in relation to anyone else further just commenting on it or thinking yes or no on it or any further action towards the questions, please.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Wieland. That was brought up at the P&Z discussion. Again, we kind of relayed that, saying that's a private matter that would have to be looked at upon their own private representation attorney. Take a look at the existing deed. Is it still valid? Does it allow this type of split?
Okay, but you're not aware of any action on part of the neighbors there. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. The third area I just wanted to mention was character of the neighborhood. That, up until about 8 years ago, was an area that you wouldn't even mention. Character of the neighborhood is very difficult. It's a opinion type thing. But we have been successful in using character of the neighborhood when we had R1 area that was being overrun by duplexes. And I believe the Supreme Court of Iowa upheld that as a reason to deny a zoning request. The question is this, can you argue that point? And I don't know if that's a good argument for this or not. It's at the beginning of the development, but I just wanted to mention that character of the neighborhood does come up now and has been used when developers are taking over a neighborhood and changing the character, in which case they were ours. Don't know if that's the case here, but I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. With that, I yield back to the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Wieland. Any further from council?
Mr.
Mr.
Mayor?
Green?
In to springboard off of what my fellow counselor had said, I see that council exists to deal with subjective situations like this. I wouldn't consider who may or may not live in the property as a reason to approve or deny, but just the merits of the minor plat itself. Looking at a map of that neighborhood, I could see multiple places where one split property could lead to additional splits. Especially in each corner of those neighborhoods, we could get an additional driveway in. And I believe it would damage the unique character and property values of the Cherrywood neighborhood acres needlessly. Yield my time, sir.
Thank you. Anything further from council? It's been motion and second is on the table. Requires a roll call vote, please.
Four voting aye, two voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 22, it reads a resolution approving the preliminary plat of the terraces at West Glen. Is there a motion, please? Motion second. Any further discussion from council? From the public? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kathy Showalter. I live at 3109 Pendleton Drive in Cedar Falls in the Lexington Heights neighborhood. I'm here to voice concerns that were addressed at the Planning and Zoning Commission and also to raise them to the City Council about water issues in Lexington Heights as water drainage issues coming out of the terraces of West Glen. Currently, the drainage situation on Waterbury and some lots on Pendleton Drive is not adequate. It's overwhelmed with any significant rainfall. I'm concerned that the development of the terraces of West Glen will create additional water issues in Lexington Heights. I would like to see an independent study not done by the developers, engineers, to adequately address the water issues that are impacted in Lexington Heights. And I would ask the council to explain to residents in Lexington Heights the recourse that's available for homeowners if the water situation is worse during and after the development of the terraces of West Glen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Showalter. Anyone further?
Hi, my name is Carmen Mason, and I live at 3108 Waterbury Drive, also in Lexington Heights. It is the last road if you go down Lexington Heights. And my main concerns, again, are the current water issues that we currently have, and we just cannot handle any more water. I've lived there, I believe, 5 or 6 years now, and at least once a year, water has flown over the road, above the drain. It just is inundated, and all of our neighbors, especially on Waterbury, are very concerned, and we just can't handle anymore. And my main concern is this may indeed help the water situation. However, it'd be nice if there was an independent study done, but also when asked on the Planning and Zoning committees, a couple of the council members there asked what would happen if it did get worse. One time, I got a shoulder shrug. The other time was, it shouldn't. That's just not very comforting to me. It may indeed get better, which would be fabulous, but I just want to make sure it doesn't get worse. And what do we do as homeowners if it does? That's my concern.
Very good. Thank you so much. Anyone further on this particular development? Yes, sir.
Hi again. Susie Sigworth, and again, I live in Cherrywood, which is up from where this is happening. But I just want to speak because I feel for these people that are in Lexington. In fact, Mark went and talked to some of them to make sure that they knew what was happening, because we see tons of water come off the golf course, and since Autumn Ridge has been developed, there is a ton more water. The water table has risen. Our sump pump in Cherrywood runs a lot more, and we come right up to Union Road. So, it's not directly impacting us, but it could if the water table keeps rising. So I hope that you are all considering this, and like Ms. Mason said, I hope that you're looking at someone independently to give you some real data, because it could potentially be devastating for their neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jump up there real quick. You've been trying.
John Biederman, civil engineer with Fairgraham in West Union. Put together the drainage report and the overall improvement plans for the addition. I'm willing to go through or answer any questions you may have regarding drainage. I can give you a brief overview, and maybe I'll just start with that, and then feel free to ask me any questions. Overall, we have 42 acres within our portion of the development. The Lexington Heights neighborhood, about 400 acres drains to that, so think of us controlling about 10% of that overall drainage area. With this initial phase, we're looking at about 32 acres plus or minus, and then in the future phase would be additional 10 plus acres. So city stormwater management ordinance requires us to maintain or manage that stormwater flow at the 2-year undeveloped level with a 100-year storm. So we can release from the site that 2-year storm on an undeveloped condition, and that's calculated not as the farm ground that it is today or has been with row crops, but as a grass surface, or basically, if you want to think of it, a meadow type surface that actually infiltrates more water than what row crop type production does. So as you guys are aware, let's say May, early June, before crops really grow and you've got a lot of bare farm ground, you get a tremendous amount of runoff. So just bringing that up because that's kind of what that area has been used as. Put together a stormwater management report reviewed by city staff. Basically what we're looking at doing is stormwater management with open detention basin on both sides of the waterway. So one on the west side of the waterway that'll handle the runoff we're creating on the west side, and then another series of 2 detention basins on the east side, and that's a future development phase. But anyway, that's kind of how it's split out. Because we can't really, just have one detention basin and take water from one side across the waterway. We're kind of splitting it, kind of limited by that waterway. Overall, we are meeting that 2-year requirement. We're holding back enough water, releasing it slowly to meet that 2-year requirement. Just looking at, we went one step further and looked at runoff calculations for the existing row crop conditions, which this has been for several years. We're ultimately reducing that runoff by about 30% from the way it sits today. So we're meeting the requirement for the pre-developed meadow type condition, and we're actually exceeding it, or reducing that runoff by about 30% from the row crop condition. So we feel we're doing a good job at improving runoff rate from this area. Certainly have heard the concerns from the Lexington Heights residents, and very much warranted. But we're, like you say, we're only 10% of the overall drainage area. So we can't, whatever we do in our little part of that drainage area, we can't solve all the problems that may exist in that area. But we're doing what we can, certainly, to improve upon that. Runoff that comes at us from off-site areas, so Wild Horse to the west, 2 locations where it drains onto us. City ordinance allows us just to pass that water through without, managing it. It's off-site water, not under our control. Actually, one of those locations, we are taking their water and putting it into our detention basin, so there'll be some level of control there. The other one we are allowing to pass through. The runoff from, I believe it's about 110 acres from the northwest, comes under a culvert there on West 12th. We are allowing to pass through. That's through the waterway that's designed, or is designated as a floodplain currently. So that will pass through. So that's a brief summary. If any of you have any questions, I'd certainly be...
Thank you very much. And you're the engineer for the developer. Right. And just in the spirit of council, if they have questions towards the expertise of Sean, I'd open it up very quickly if there's anything left over from the previous concerns. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank you.
it. Any further comments? Anything further from council? Been motion, second on the table. It requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to item 25, it reads, a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a supplemental agreement for the 2019 engineering services relative to the Parkade brick replacement project. Is there a motion, please?
Second.
Motion second. Open it up for council.
Yeah, I'm hoping that staff can give us a little summary of this. When you consider everything that's going on downtown, just got done raising a lot of money for a streetscape project. There's a whitewater project coming along, we hope pretty soon. Just finished a parking study, actually implementing some of the findings of that downtown. And we're in the middle of a overall visioning activity for downtown as well. And when I looked at this proposal, I was so pleased that it kind of was beginning to tie those various projects together, and I felt like the public deserved to have an understanding of what this is and where it's headed. So I have to admit, I gave Stephanie a little heads up, and hopefully she'll be able to share a little more with us, if you don't mind.
Sure. The streetscape effort started back around 2014, so it's been a number of years in the works. And more recently, in December of 2018, council approved a contract related to the parkade design and considering options for that design, whether we should stick with what we have or if we should consider something different. And so then we had a public meeting in early May and then a council committee meeting on May 20th to discuss those options and the recommendation that staff had related to the parkade design and moving forward with that project. During those public meetings, during the development of the project and also at the council table, there were several areas that were discussed as potential I'll call them additions, but really I would say complements to the project, probably of projects that were already going on or that were pretty close to being in the queue. And so shouldn't we take advantage of the opportunity of the design that we're looking at for the parkade and try to work those into some of those other projects so that we don't miss opportunities. And so several of those are highlighted in my memo. They're related to, and I conveyed already at those May meetings, how the River Place developer was already working with us in terms of the sidewalk in front of the MU2 building and how to integrate the look of the parkade that way with our plan to bring that out to the side streets and take that on then to the sidewalk connection onto State Street right in front of the plaza prior to the plaza being built. So that was one area of kind of expansion of an opportunity there of something that was already happening. The other opportunity is with the levee project. We had a pretty big impact to Peter Melindy Park, and we knew that we were going to need to develop designs to rework that area. And so we have a concept developed that the Park and Rec Commission discussed, I believe, last week, and we're trying to move forward to be ready to bid that project and bring that in front of council as well as to how we bring forward some of the parkade design into that project. With that then, also with the parkade project, I guess we'll be looking at the crosswalk of West First and Main Street there, and how do we tie that element in terms of the look of the parkade. Already this summer, we repainted that area and put in a little bit bolder painting for the crosswalks there, but what might be some crosswalk treatments that incorporate the parkade design. Questions were raised about the remainder of East 2nd Street with MU2 being done. Well, what would happen with then the rest of East 2nd Street from Main to State so the 3/4 of the block wouldn't stick out and 1/4 was done. And so we'll be looking at adding that to the project, and that's what this contract amendment would do. And then two other opportunities have come up. We also have, just like River Place, we have Arabella getting toward completion. That's the 3-story project here on West 1st Street, just west of Washington. So that developer's been approached about, hey, could we work together? Because again, we're doing this streetscape expansion project. Already with their site plan, they were incorporating decorative lighting and landscaping, but the sidewalk was planned just like MU2 to be a standard concrete sidewalk. So we've approached them about that and wanted to include the cost for services to put together images into this contract. And then finally, Oster Regent Theater is a possibility. At this time, I don't speak too firmly about it. We've just had some initial conversations with their architect about some possibilities there and talked about, well, maybe this is another opportunity that we should think about and partner with the construction of the parkade brick project.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion from council? From the public? It's been motion and second. It requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to item 31, is there a motion to allow bills and payroll?
Motion to approve bills and payroll?
Motion and second. It requires a roll call vote, please.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next item, does City Council have referrals this evening?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
over the years, people parking trailers on the street in residential neighborhoods for extended period has drawn complaints from residents. Our present ordinance allows 48 hours to park a trailer or a boat on the street without getting a ticket. It is common to see in some areas trailers being moved after 48 hours only to be replaced in the same spot. So in effect, they're there 24, 7 days a week. It's very hard under our ordinance to ticket these vehicles, and we've been trying. This issue was moved to committee in February 19, 2018, where Attorney Kevin Rogers, after reviewing parking ordinances in other cities, presented staff's recommendation for dealing with parking. A motion to have staff draw up an ordinance on this was presented, and it was defeated by a vote of 4-3. That's 15 months ago. Since this time, complaints from citizens have continued against boats and commercial trailers being parked on city streets. This is commercial trailers where the owner of the home runs the business for extended periods up to 24 hours, 7 days a week. And this effect, and here's a new term that came up in the last year, people are concerned about the character of their neighborhood, having to look out and see trailers parked day in and day out without us being able to ticket them. It's very difficult when you have to go and mark the vehicle and then go back and ticket it. Since over a year and a half has passed and the parking problem has not been resolved, I make a motion that we again review on-street parking to see what we can do to eliminate these problems for these citizens.
Mr. Wheelan, do you want that to go to committee again?
Please.
Okay, so a motion to take the parking of trailers to a committee meeting.
Second.
There's been motion and second. Open up for discussion with council. Mr. Blanford?
I guess, Mr. Wheelan, the only concern I have, and forgive me, but what I remember when we discussed this previously was the concern that the language might be too restrictive and that it would prevent people from having, whether it's their camper in preparation for, if they bring it on Thursday and they're going to leave Saturday, that it could prevent them from doing that. The same thing with a boat, that sort of thing. So I'm sensitive to the problem, but I want to make sure we're not creating another problem.
That's exactly why I'd like it to go back, because those are good questions, and they weren't answered in the original proposal that was presented. So if we go back to committee and throw these ideas out, maybe we can find some common ground where if I have a camper trailer and I'm going to have visitors here for 3 or 4 days, I can do it. So that's the purpose of pulling it back. But in no way should people have to have trailers on their street 24/7. And if people knew it, if everybody wanted to, we'd have boat trailers in almost every neighborhood. All they got to do is move it 6 feet, get the mark to move, and they got another 24. On the weekend, very difficult to do it. We're shorter on staff, and that's the only time you can get them now. So you catch them on Friday night, mark the trailer, and Monday morning, you've gone beyond the 48. But there are a lot of things that police officers have to do other than working on ordinance that people who want to can game the ordinance and win. So I hope we can do that and simply review it, change what isn't acceptable, and get something that is agreeable.
Anything further from Mr. Green?
Mr. Mayor, I was one of the people to vote against having the new ordinance when it was 4-3. And my concern at the time was whether it was actually needed, if we were over-prescribing for a situation that might not be real throughout Cedar Falls. And just in my time over the last year or so since we've reviewed that ordinance, I've certainly seen that on Walnut Street and 3rd Street where I live in that area. What we're seeing is a lot more boat trailers out. and contractors. And my sense is, from talking with contractors, they're having it at their homes because it's easier to position when they go off into a job. But if this ordinance originally was built for the 48-hour restriction, in order to keep those things from being set, that ordinance is not working. And so I fully support having that change in order to limit the ability for boat trailers and construction trailers to be on site for long periods of time because they are a major eyesore.
Thank you. Anyone further from council? It's been motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Can I see the nay votes, please? I see 2 of them, so that does pass to go to committee. Any other city council referrals this evening? Moving on to the next item, does city council have any updates?
Mr. Mayor, it asked for a request, or asked for an update on the Eric Road crosswalk situation, where we are with the status for that.
Do we have staff available for that? Is it you? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Just to give you a little bit of background, a few months ago, we had some individuals in Eric Road area concerned about the safety of children crossing the street for the new school up there. They requested some improvements to the crosswalks, which staff started putting together some ideas on that. Due to our workload, we were unable to get to that very quickly, but we're going to start that work this week. The first part of that project will be cutting the concrete curb for the mid-block crossings, and then we'll follow that up with some improvements on the intersections at Applewood, I believe, and also at Meadowlark Lane. Once those are completed, we will move on to Ironwood, which is improvements need to be completed on 4 intersections there, and our intent is to try to get this all completed as early in August as possible, so all those safety improvements are in place prior to school opening in mid-August.
Thank you very much.
Anything further updates for council? Director Olson, I think you have an update in relation to, well, just give us the update. I think it's Public Safety Building, but I forget.
Yes, it is. Yeah, so we opened up operations at the Public Safety Building today, and what that means to our citizens is that police operations have moved from City Hall to 4600 South Main. So there'll be no police officers housed in City Hall anymore. They'll be at 4600 South Main. Fire has also resumed response from 4600 South Main and will continue to respond from 18th and Main. So there'll be 2 locations in which fire responding to calls to. Police have moved to 4600 South Main. All other operations at City Hall will remain the same. They'll be open during normal business hours, evening meetings, and things of that sort.
Very good. Thank you, Director. And Mark, I think you're up again as well for designation for Cedar Falls and the Cedar Valley.
I want to let the mayor and city council and community know about something that occurred late last week. The Cedar Valley was first designated as a great place by the state of Iowa in 2009. Created in 2005 and administered by the Department of Cultural Affairs with the state of Iowa, Great Places is a program designated to encourage communities across Iowa to come together to forge new visions of the future. As of 2018, 45 areas in Iowa have received a designation as Great Place. Depending upon budget limitations, the state of Iowa allocates funding for community projects to help them achieve their visions. In Cedar Falls, the Ice House Museum received approximately $85,000 that helped restore the museum after the 2008 floods, and Waterloo received funding for their downtown riverfront Renaissance Trail. Recently, Intercog assisted Cedar Falls and Waterloo to complete an application to be redesignated as a Great Place. I'm pleased to let the mayor, council, and community know that the application was successful and the Cedar Valley continues to be referred to as a Great Place. Staff will work together with Waterloo to identify a common project where we can seek grant dollars from the state of Iowa for assistance, and we will bring any of those projects to City Council for their consideration in the future.
Thank you, Mark. Moving on to public forum, speakers will have one opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on topics germane to city business. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak tonight? Ms. Pop?
Good evening again. My name is Penny Popp. I live at 4805 South Main. I am president of the South Main and Green Hill Corridor Neighborhood Association. On Tuesday, August 6th, our citywide National Night Out will once again take place at Target from 4 to 7 p.m. National Night Out celebrates the partnership between neighbors, police, and the city we live in, all who can work together towards crime and drug abuse prevention. The South Main and Green Hill Corridor Neighborhood Association is pleased to announce their first annual Neighborhood Night Out in conjunction with our citywide event. This walkable event brings the true purpose of National Night Out back to a neighborhood level. The association has partnered with our new neighbors, Fairway, and the Public Safety Department, and with our established neighbors, folks from the Dry Run Creek Project and Western Home. Western Home was one of the first to ask, how can we help? The association sent back a word of thanks, but for this night, we asked that they just come, enjoy, and be our neighbors. Our night out event is the same night as the citywide event, Tuesday, August 6th, from 6 to 8 p.m., on Bluebell and Main between Fairway and the Public Safety Building. For our neighbors who live in the area, stroll on over with the family and bring a blanket or chair and enjoy some free ice cream and take a peek at our new Public Safety Building, which houses all of our emergency services. And of course, meet your neighbors. To the Mayor and City Council, all of you are invited as well. Our goal is to bring folks together and share information to make our city the best we can. And it all starts with us. A basic hello and getting to know our neighbors. That's an invaluable tool in crime prevention. And we think it's a good place to start. Mark your calendar for August 6th and plan on stopping by to say hello. Hope to see you there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anyone further for public comment? Sure.
Hello, Whitney Smith. I live on Neola Street in Cedar Falls. So the gods that be are Facebook. News came out today that the city is planning on replacing Battalion Chief Kurt Hildebrand with PSO Tim Smith and moving Battalion Chief Kurt Hildebrand, I believe it's set into inspections to 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. I guess this has always been said the PSO program is council-led, and I haven't seen anything in here where council has approved this or has been brought up at all. This is very concerning for me. I'd like to know that if we have an emergency at my home or if my home is on fire, that the people who show up know what they're doing. The person in charge can direct and know what they're doing. Mr. Smith has 9 months of professional fire experience. It takes a professional fireman years, an entire career, to build up to battalion chief, and I don't think 9 months can cut it. I'll end with saying a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., "Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Before the next speaker, any questions from council to staff?
I think Director Olson might have an update. Mr. Mayor.
Director Olson, go ahead.
Sure, I can certainly address that. So it's the Fire Battalion Chief that we're moving to inspections was in inspections for nearly the entire year of 2018. We moved him back to shift due to some vacancies, due to some long-term injuries. Now he's moving back to inspections where he previously was. The public safety officer, Tim Smith, actually has 14 years of firefighting experience. He was first certified as a firefighter 14 years ago. He's also been certified as a pump operator. He's gone to command school. He's firefighter 1 certified, firefighter 2 certified, and he's also a fire instructor. Those are all from the top of my head, but he's a very highly motivated and qualified individual that'll do a great job.
Thank you, Director Olson. Anything further from council? Next speaker, please. Mr. Skane.
Have you read the Courier tonight?
Mr. Skeen, I don't mean to call you out, sir, but I need to just hang on for a second if you don't mind. I've talked to council about this. In the council rules for council meetings, there's Rule 41, I believe it's called, and it's for individuals to make public statements as a candidate. They can be construed as a platform to run for office is prohibited. So just letting you know as to Rule 41, and we'll be very keen on as far as the comments are made and the public position that you might take. So we can start your minute now if you don't mind, City Clerk. Go ahead,
What?
sir.
Start my 5 minutes?
Yeah, that
Okay,
didn't take away your 5
Jim
minutes.
Skane, 2215 Clay Street. And have you seen the Courier tonight? A whole bunch of big tax people want to have their properties reduced. Now, we know over the past 5 years, a phenomenon has happened in Cedar Falls where we had, in the name of economic development, company after company coming into Cedar Falls, getting nice subsidies. But at the same time, something happened. In January of 2014, it said in the Courier that 23 part-time Cedar Falls employees came to work and were told that they were fired, that they were not needed because their work had been outsourced. Also in January of 2014, the bus service on which many people depend was cut back. But at the same time, my first meeting here was in July, the first meeting in July 2014. And it happened to be the next meeting after 2824, the illegal passing of 2824 was done. And all kinds of offices. And it was clear from the behavior of the people up here that the city administrator was indeed in charge. But what happened more than anything else there, because at that first meeting that I went to in July of 2014, there were 2 items on the agenda that said these 2 places are going to get big subsidies because they're coming into the industrial park. So city services were cut. People coming in had subsidies. Now, if that was just one time, that was one thing, but the whole process has continued now to the point where city services have been cut so badly, and there's not the funds appropriated by this council.
Thank you.
And there's no camp. Look,
So-
Mr.
Thank you. So
Mr.
noted,
Mayor,
Mr. No, it's not your time to speak right now. It's my time to speak, and I'm so noting Councilman Whelan's suggestion that you're moving too far forward on Rule 41.
I'll change. But anyway, instead of 38 firefighters, we have 17. Instead of
You have clearly stated in public that your position on the public safety model that will not be allowed per Rule 41. I know it's quick on you, but it's just, we'll let you know tonight as far as these rules and give some leeway, but moving forward, please recognize that as far as council's concerned.
that, I mean, it is a violation of free speech. I see these people running for office in Congress.
1 minute remaining.
And they're able to do anything they want because they are members of that group, and I'm a member of the public. Now, if I were talking about one of the candidates, like any of the candidates that are here, there's 3 of the candidates that are
Yes.
here.
So, hang on, point of order, please, hang on. Mr. Whalen?
If it appears to be a political statement, whether it is or not, if the appearance is, it is.
Thank you.
You continue to go on a campaign trail on placing fire. It's not appropriate. I believe in other candidates don't do that. And the mayor's asked you to stop.
But Mr. Wheeling, comments to me, please, if you don't mind. I do appreciate the second motion in that. And so, Mr. Skane?
Anyway, I hope you don't rule me out of order, Mr. Mayor, because...
Your time is up. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen the 1 minute.
There you go. The 1 minute was before. Appreciate it. Anyone further for public comment this evening?
I will...
Come on up, please.
Mary Jane McCollum, 807 West 2nd. I spoke to you about a month ago about issues with speeding on 2nd Street and also concerns about what would happen when the road was closed on 1st and we had to detour. And I hesitate to ask a question, but I'm wondering, I know Mr. Green's been out, but I wonder if any of you have been in the neighborhood driving around, if you've had any comments or observations you've made. I have some comments, and maybe I should...
If you'd have comments, that would be wonderful, and we consider any sort of questions when you're finished speaking.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary Jane.
Okay. The speeding has gotten worse because the volume has increased. And the only thing I see that has changed is that there's now a sign on 2nd and Franklin that says, "Cross traffic does not stop," which didn't stop before, so there's nothing new. There's no update there. There are 3 issues. One is headed east, one is headed west, and it has to do with where the stop signs are. I think I tried to, at the meeting at the school administration building when we talked about this with people in the neighborhood, the sense I got was that we're going to wait and see what happens before we address any problems, and that's why I ask if anybody's been out to see what the issues are. 2nd Street has become a racetrack mostly going west, which surprises me. I thought it would be more downhill. But what's happened is 2nd and Franklin, for the people going east, they can't get around the corner because of the traffic, the cross traffic on Franklin. Going west, the problem is with the stop sign on 1st and Walnut, because people come to a stop at 2nd and Walnut, go right around the corner, go over to 1st, and there's no reason for that stop sign to be there now because no one's coming across. They should be able to go on around. So what's happened is a lot of people are choosing to go up 2nd rather than wait in line at that 2nd stop sign. My concern is not so much the 60 days we have right now, but what's going to happen next year when that whole area is closed. Where are the cars going to go? And I don't know if the DOT is responsible for this, but the double line up the middle of 2nd has not helped the issue. It's like saying, okay, this is now a highway, go as fast as you want. I've not seen a single police car there. The last time I saw the speed cart, it was sitting at 3rd and Pearl. There's no reason for it to be there. That intersection has no yield signs or stop signs, so everybody slows down anyway. And when it's sitting 20 feet past the intersection, you look there and you think, why is it here? It needs to be, I was asked, where would you want it? Well, 800 or 900 block of 2nd, or maybe 11 and 1200 block of 2nd, which is another double block. But the speeding has really gotten out of control. So I was just wondering if anyone had been out to look and maybe what the city's position has been, if it's changed, or if there are any plans to make any adjustments for the next 60 days.
Very good. Thank you, Mary Jane.
Thank you.
Anything further from council to staff to other folks? Mr. Blanford?
I'm wondering if Director Sheets, I did go out to the to 2nd Street, and I think we knew that was a potential problem because there just aren't a lot of detour routes off of 1st Street. So I was wondering if we have any updates for the resident as far as traffic calming measures.
We'll have Director Schrage talk about what we've done so far to address that.
We anticipated some challenges with the detour that the DOT provided. What we had in place prior to the detour going into effect on July 8th was some pavement markings along 2nd Street to try to get some traffic calming elements in there and reduce some speed. We did have some issues last week with some stop sign placement and stop bars. We got some of that area repainted. We put a temporary stop sign out there. It's kind of on the first few days were quite chaotic with people trying to find alternate routes. If there continues to be speeding issues along 2nd, I have worked with the PD department previously on placement of the speed trailer. And then we'll continue to monitor the area, see if there's additional elements or signage that we can do to reduce some of that issue.
Thank you.
Anything further from council to staff for discussion? Any further public comment this evening? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion second, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed nay. We are adjourned. Thank you.